All right, so this time you guys have really outdone yourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube video transcript, grainy security stills, handwritten notes.
Yeah. This is quite the collection.
This is like a real deep dive.
A real deep dive.
But that's what we do here on the deep dive, right? So let's dive into this story. This is one about political intrigue and government overreach.
Yeah, it's a doozy for sure.
It is. It is. So where do we even begin with this one?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got so many different angles.
Well, I think the heart of this story really lies with Dusty Crane.
Go
You know, this former undercover FBI agent.
Mm.
And to understand him, we need to kind of go back and understand his journey, and particularly how his experiences in Vietnam,
Oh,
alongside a young J. Edgar Hoover, no less, really seem to have kind of pushed him towards this instability.
it's like something out of a history book, right? Hoover, the FBI, Vietnam.
Yeah,
It's like a recipe for a dark and twisty story.
absolutely.
And from what I'm seeing in this YouTube clip, Dusty's claims about the FBI are pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
He's talking about a secret program called Operation Unity and accusing them of killing innocent civilians.
Yeah, this is where the security footage and the handwritten notes become really crucial because they start to corroborate Dusty's claims.
Okay.
And what we see is this pattern of escalating behavior that really suggests a desperate attempt to expose the truth.
So he's not just some, disgruntled ex-agent with an axe to grind.
Right.
He's actually trying to warn people.
He's trying to force the public to pay attention. He's fighting police officers. He's disrupting public events.
It's tragic, really.
It is.
Like a man possessed, driven to these extremes out of a sense of duty, a need to right the wrongs he was a part of.
Exactly.
And as we see in these security stills, his attempts to expose Operation Unity ultimately cost him his life.
They did.
Wow.
Which brings us to Mara,
Okay.
our journalist who gets caught in this tangled web.
Right.
And remember, she was already investigating the suspicious death of Sofia Flores, an activist who was believed to have been killed in a hit and run. Dusty contacted her because of her work on Sofia's case.
So he saw her as someone who wouldn't just dismiss him as, just a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Precisely.
Someone who already had an inkling that things weren't what they seemed.
Exactly. And this connection becomes crucial because through Dusty Mara stumbles onto something far bigger and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined.
Okay, so we've got this desperate ex-agent, a suspicious death, and a journalist digging for the truth. This is already a pretty compelling story.
It is.
But then there's this whole other layer with Gabe,
Right.
this mysterious figure working directly for the FBI director, Robinson.
Yes.
The note suggests he was like Robinson's right-hand man, cleaning up messes, silencing threats.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about Gabe is that he wasn't just a mindless enforcer. He had a history with Dusty, a complex relationship that seemed to go beyond just, the typical dynamic between an agent and his handler.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's almost this genuine concern for Dusty, even a protective need.
Despite Gabe being the one tasked with keeping him in line.
So he's stuck in this loyalty tug of war.
Right.
On one side, you have his duty to the FBI and Robinson, and on the other, you have this personal connection to Dusty,
Exactly.
a man who's clearly unraveling, but may also be telling the truth. What a position to be in.
Absolutely. And this internal conflict really starts to play out as Mara digs deeper into Dusty's claims.
Okay.
She uncovers a falsified criminal record for Dusty.
Hold on. How did she even find that?
Well, that's not entirely clear from the materials you provided.
Okay.
But what is clear is that this discovery makes Mara realize that she's dealing with something far bigger than just a rogue agent.
Okay.
This is systemic,
Wow.
a cover-up orchestrated from the very top.
So it goes all the way up.
It seems so.
And that's where things take a really dark turn
They do?
with the death of Drew, another journalist.
Right.
The notes mention a frantic call from Drew to Mara saying he was onto something big, something dangerous, and that someone was after him,
Uh-huh.
and then silence. Yeah. Drew's death really kind of ramps up the stakes considerably because it confirms that Robinson and those involved in Operation Unity are willing to silence anyone who gets too close to the truth.
Wow, even their own.
Even their own.
Okay, so we've got a dead journalist, a rogue agent who may have been silenced, and a determined journalist who's now in serious danger.
Yeah, it's a real-life spy thriller.
This is a movie.
It is.
But what's the end game here?
Right.
What was Robinson's motive for creating Operation Unity in the first place?
Well, this is where we really need to kind of understand the mindset of someone like Robinson
Okay.
and perhaps draw a parallel to the legacy of J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover led the FBI for almost 50 years.
Right.
And he believed in maintaining control through surveillance and intimidation.
Uh-huh.
He amassed files on politicians, activists, even celebrities,
Wow.
using them as leverage to maintain his power and influence.
So Robinson's following in his footsteps,
It seems that way.
using the FBI to silence dissent and eliminate perceived threats.
Yeah.
But targeting innocent civilians, that seems extreme even for the FBI.
Well, remember those recovered files on Operation Unity you sent?
Yeah.
They paint a chilling picture.
Oh, boy.
Robinson truly believed that anyone who challenged the status quo, anyone who questioned authority, was a threat to national security.
Whoa.
He was obsessed with maintaining order, even if it meant operating outside the law.
That's a slippery slope.
That is.
I mean, who gets to decide who's a threat and where do you draw the line?
Right.
It's unsettling to think that someone in a position of power could wield that much control.
It's a chilling thought.
But what about Dusty's family? The notes mention his daughter Amanda and his granddaughter Natalie.
Yes.
Where do they fit into all of this?
Well, that's where Robinson's ruthlessness becomes truly apparent.
Okay.
He didn't just want to silence Dusty. He wanted to control him.
Uh-huh.
And what better way to do that than to exploit his love for his family?
Oh, no.
He placed Amanda and Natalie in witness protection,
Wow.
using them as leverage against Dusty.
That's cold.
And later Gabe?
Using a man's family as pawns in his twisted game.
Mm-hmm.
That just adds a whole other level of darkness to this story.
It does.
So we've got a desperate father, a ruthless director, and a journalist caught in the crossfire.
Mm-hmm.
This is intense. So what happens next?
Well, that's where things get really interesting this. Gabe, torn between his loyalty to Robinson and his conscience, is forced to make a choice.
Okay.
A choice that will have profound consequences for everyone involved. But we'll dive into that in part 2. I mean, Robinson's arrest, that was a seismic event. It wasn't just about bringing down a corrupt official.
Right.
It was about shattering this illusion of control,
Mm-hmm.
exposing the dark underbelly of an organization that most people trust implicitly.
It's like that moment in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
When the curtain gets pulled back.
Exactly.
And you see the man pulling the levers.
Yeah.
Suddenly this seemingly all-powerful figure is revealed to be just another flawed human
Right.
capable of great evil.
And the files that Gabe recovered, they're like pieces of a shattered mirror,
Yeah.
each fragment reflecting a distorted image of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
We see how Robinson, fueled by this paranoid worldview,
Right.
really justified his actions as necessary to protect national security. I mean, he saw enemies everywhere.
Really?
In activists, journalists,
Why do you-
even within the FBI itself.
It's like he created this world of fear and suspicion
He did.
and then used that to justify his actions.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to Dusty and those handwritten notes.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to read his words.
Yeah.
To see the torment and guilt that he carried.
Mhm.
He knew the truth about Operation Unity.
He did.
He'd witnessed its horrors firsthand,
Yeah.
and yet he was trapped by his past,
Right.
by his own complicity in the program,
It's a tragic situation.
and his descent into what appeared to be mental instability.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about personal demons. It was a reaction to the weight of the secrets he carried.
Right.
The burden of knowing how deeply the rot had set in,
Exactly.
his erratic behavior, those desperate attempts to expose the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It all makes sense now.
They become even more poignant in this light.
It's like he was trying to warn everyone, to scream from the rooftops about the danger lurking beneath the surface.
Absolutely.
But no one was listening.
Or those who did were too afraid to believe him.
Right. And the tragedy is that his fears were completely justified.
They were.
I mean, look at Sophia Flores,
Yeah.
the activist Dusty fell in love with during his undercover days. We tend to gloss over her story,
We do.
but the Operation Unity files,
Yeah.
they reveal the chilling truth.
They do.
Robinson saw her as a threat,
Right.
someone capable of mobilizing opposition,
Yeah.
and he had her eliminated. Wait, are you saying he ordered her death?
The files suggest exactly that.
Wow.
There's a memo outlining the need to neutralize Sophia,
Wow.
citing her growing influence and connections to other activist groups.
So the hit and run,
It was staged.
it was a cover-up.
It seems so.
That's true.
Robinson viewed her as a virus,
Unbelievable.
something to be eradicated before it could spread.
It's sickening to think that someone could justify taking a life like that
I agree.
just because of someone's beliefs.
Yeah.
And what about Drew,
Yeah.
The journalist who called Mara right before he disappeared.
Right.
What happened to him?
Well, Drew's case is particularly disturbing. He was getting too close, asking the right questions.
Right.
And someone decided he needed to be silenced.
The notes you sent,
Yes.
they mention a source within the FBI, someone Drew was meeting with,
Right.
who promised to provide him with incriminating evidence. Do we know who this source was?
Unfortunately, the materials you provided don't offer a definitive answer.
Got
But what we do know is that Drew's death really served as this chilling reminder to anyone who dared to challenge Robinson's authority.
Wow.
It really reinforced the climate of fear that he had cultivated, ensuring that most people within the FBI chose complicity over courage.
But Gabe chose differently.
He did.
He broke ranks, exposed the truth,
Yeah.
and brought Robinson down.
Yeah,
That takes guts,
it does.
especially considering the risks involved.
Absolutely.
I mean, he could have easily ended up like Dusty or Drew.
He could have.
His decision was a pivotal moment in this story.
It was.
A testament to the power of individual choice, even within a system designed to suppress dissent.
You know, it's important to remember that Gabe wasn't some kind of saint.
Right.
He was complicit in Robinson's schemes for years,
Yeah.
turning a blind eye to the moral compromises involved.
Right.
But something shifted in him,
Yeah.
perhaps sparked by Dusty's desperate pleas or the realization of the depths of Robinson's depravity.
So it wasn't just about self-preservation.
Well, that's a question each listener needs to ponder for themselves.
Okay.
Was Gabe driven by guilt, by a desire for redemption,
Yeah.
or was it simply a calculated move to save his own skin?
It's a good question.
The truth likely lies somewhere in between,
Yeah.
a complex mix of motivations that even Gabe himself might struggle to fully understand.
It makes you wonder, what does true redemption look like in a situation like this?
That's a tough question.
Can you ever fully erase the stain of past complicity?
Yeah, and what about the systemic issues
Right.
that allowed someone like Robinson to rise to power in the first place?
These are the bigger questions
They are.
that linger long after the initial shock of the scandal fades.
They do.
The exposure of Operation Unity wasn't just about bringing down one man.
No, it wasn't.
It was about shining a light on the potential for corruption within institutions that we often take for granted.
Exactly.
It raises concerns about the balance of power,
Right.
or the dangers of unchecked authority,
Absolutely.
and about the responsibility we all have
Yes.
to hold those in power accountable.
It's a sobering thought.
It's a lot to unpack. And I admit, it's kind of terrifying to think about.
It is.
How easily those in power can manipulate information, silence dissent, and control the narrative.
It's a scary thought.
It makes you wonder what other secrets are out there.
Right.
What other injustices are being committed
Yeah.
in the name of national security or some other noble cause.
That's the unsettling truth we're left with.
Right.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface
Okay.
of a much larger and more complex story, one that continues to unfold even as we speak.
Okay.
And as we delve further into Gabe's motivations,
Right.
the fate of Dusty's family,
Yeah.
and the far-reaching consequences of Operation Unity,
Okay.
we'll uncover even more disturbing truths
Oh, boy.
and grapple with the ethical dilemmas that lie at the heart of this conspiracy. But we'll explore that in part 3.
You know, it's a strange feeling, right? We've uncovered this massive conspiracy, exposed the corruption at the heart of the FBI. And yet there's this lingering unease.
Yeah.
Like we've opened Pandora's box and we can't quite close it again.
That's a very apt analogy.
Right.
You know, exposing a conspiracy of this magnitude, it doesn't offer those neat resolutions.
Right.
It creates ripples, raises new questions, and forces us to kind of confront the uncomfortable reality that line between good and evil,
Yeah.
it's often blurry,
Right. Especially when power's involved.
especially when power's involved.
And speaking of blurry lines, let's talk about Gabe.
Okay.
I mean, he's hailed as a hero for exposing Operation Unity.
Right.
But he was also deeply involved in it for years.
He was.
Can someone who's been complicit in such atrocities truly be redeemed?
That's a question that philosophers have grappled with for centuries.
Right.
Can past sins be absolved through present acts of courage?
Mm-hmm.
And what does true atonement even look like in a situation like this? I don't know that there are easy answers.
Right. And then there's the question of consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, Gabe's on the run, branded a traitor by the very organization he served.
Right.
What kind of life can he possibly have now?
Right. Will he always be looking over his shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop?
It's a high price to pay for doing the right thing.
It is.
And it really speaks to the risks that whistleblowers often face.
Absolutely.
They sacrifice their careers, their reputations, sometimes even their freedom
Yeah.
to expose the truth.
And yet without them,
Right.
these systems of corruption would just continue to operate in the shadows.
You know, there's this one scene in the YouTube video, the action movie clip,
Yeah.
that's been stuck in my head.
Okay.
It shows Gabe with Dusty's granddaughter, Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
She's completely oblivious to the danger surrounding them.
Yeah.
Just playing with this toy gun
Yeah.
while Gabe watches her with this melancholic look.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful juxtaposition.
It is. That scene, although brief, I think speaks volumes
Yeah.
about the cyclical nature of trauma and the legacy of secrets.
Mhm.
You have Natalie, this innocent child, representing the future,
Right.
and then Gabe, burdened by the weight of his past, representing the sins of the fathers.
Wow.
It raises the question, can we ever truly escape the shadows cast by those who came before us?
And what about Amanda,
Yeah.
Dusty's daughter?
Dusty's daughter.
I mean, she's lost so much. Her mother, her father, her sense of normalcy.
She has.
Can she ever forgive Gabe for his role in her family's destruction?
Right. Or will the scars of their shared history forever keep them apart?
Forgiveness is a complex process,
It is.
often requiring a level of empathy that can be difficult to achieve.
Right. Especially when the wounds run so deep.
But it's also a necessary step towards healing,
It is.
both for the individual and for society as a whole.
I agree.
I mean, without forgiveness, we risk becoming prisoners of our past,
Mm-hmm.
unable to move forward and build a better future.
And speaking of the future,
Right.
what happens now?
Yeah, what happens now?
I mean, those files Gabe recovered.
Yeah.
They must contain a treasure trove of information.
They must.
Will the truth about Operation Unity ever fully come to light?
Right. Or will it be swept under the rug again?
Right? In the name of national security or some other vague justification.
It's the million-dollar question.
It is who gets to decide what information
Right.
is deemed safe for public consumption.
And who holds the power to classify, to redact, to bury the truth?
These are questions we need to be asking not just in the context of this particular conspiracy,
Right.
but in all aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
We can't afford to be passive consumers of information.
Right.
We need to be active participants demanding transparency and holding those in power accountable.
It all feels a bit overwhelming, to be honest. Like one person's actions, no matter how courageous, can't possibly dismantle these vast systems of power.
You're right, it can feel daunting.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that change rarely happens overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slow, often messy process driven by the collective actions of individuals who refuse to accept the status quo.
Okay.
Gabe's decision to expose Operation Unity was a spark,
Right.
and it's up to the rest of us to fan those flames. To keep asking questions, keep pushing for accountability, and keep believing that a more just and equitable world is possible.
Wow, that's powerful. You've given us a lot to think about,
I hope
a
so.
lot to digest. This has been quite a journey, unpacking this intricate web of secrets, betrayals, and ultimately glimmers of hope.
Glimmers of hope.
What started as a deep dive into some seemingly random materials
Yeah.
turned into this exploration of the human condition,
Right.
the struggle for power,
Yeah.
and the enduring belief in truth and justice.
And while this particular deep dive may be coming to an end,
Right.
the conversation doesn't have to stop here.
Right.
Take this newfound knowledge, these insights, and use them to fuel your own explorations. Ask questions, challenge assumptions, and never underestimate the power of your own voice. Because as we've seen, even the most deeply buried truths have a way of finding their way to the surface,
Right.
often in the most unexpected ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
And remember, the truth is out there.
It is.
Keep searching, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep believing